Hi everyone, my name is Ralph. I want to share with you the story of how I adopted my son, but it got out of my way. I tried my best to be a good father, but in the end I became his worst enemy. Look at my history and write your opinion in the comments, what you think about this. In general, it was like this. I was 20 years old when I met and fell in love with the girl of my dreams. Her name was Sarah. She was so amazing that my head immediately blew off. I was sure that she was my destiny. So I did not hesitate, and after a couple of months I made an offer. Everything was fine with her until it came to the kids. We couldn't have a baby, and it was a nightmare. Sarah was obsessed with pregnancy and did everything she could to make it work. Sometimes I felt like she was challenging herself and couldn't carry out the plan, which made her feel bad. In the end, when we were running around the hospitals, when the strength and money were already running out, she offered me to take a foster child. To be honest, I didn't like this idea right away, because I believed that we still have time. After all, it's only been a year. I was sure that I just need to try again. Maybe stupidly change the situation and that's it. But Sarah did not listen to me. She ran around all these orphanages and looked for a child for us. She didn't even really consult me, and we had a lot of fights about it. In the end, she chose a boy in one of the boarding schools. You know, his name is Sam, and he was already 14 years old. Yes, this was far from a baby. Moreover, he already had a well-established mindset. He was not stupid, far from stupid, but so sharpened by the fact that he lives only one day. Sam was wild, like everyone else from boarding school, I think. In short, our first meeting with him took place, in fact, already at our home. I didn't go to pick him up from the orphanage. I decided to go to work instead. Sarah was beaming with happiness, but she knew I didn't support the idea. I held out my hand to Sam, and he looked at it like I was showing him my fist, very aggressively, so I took my hand away and went to my bedroom. In the evening we were going to dinner, and I sat down in my usual seat, but Sarah asked me to move. You see, Sam liked my place. I was indignant. They say I have been sitting there for a year, but Sarah asked me to give up the child. Okay, I agreed. After a while, it turned out that he liked my mug, my plate, my razor, my towel, and robe. I became really angry. What else could he like next? Maybe I belong in this house. I was angry with myself, but I didn't say anything yet. So we lived like this for about a week. It seemed endless, and I wanted it to be over and Sam to go back to his room. But I knew it would be cruel of me to take him there by the hand. And Sarah, she devoted all her time to him, didn't even pay attention to me, didn't talk to me, didn't look at me, and didn't even listen. She was fully occupied only, as she said, with our son. But what can I do? I didn't feel that it was ours. He was a strange adult guy to me. What kind of son can he be to me? One day, Sarah ran off on business and left us alone. We sat down to breakfast. As soon as she left, I immediately took out my phone and began to stare at it and eat more. Sam turned up the TV and looked at it. A few minutes later, I heard him rummaging in the purse that Sarah had left behind. The guy took her wallet, pulled out the money, and put it all back. I'm just freaking out from such impudence. Why did you take someone else's money? Not even shy, I asked maliciously, and Sam says to me, it's not your money, I want to take it. I tried to explain to him that this is our money and that he is like our son and so we do not have in the house, but brazenly told me that Sarah is his new mother and that she loves him more than me and that very soon I will not be in this house. And then I burst out. I got angry. I started yelling at him, and then Sarah came in. She saw such a picture, Sam is still an actor, immediately fell to the floor and pretended to hit him. I told him it wasn't true, that he'd made it up, but Sarah wouldn't listen. Well, then Sam said I yelled at him for stealing money when he didn't take it. Sarah reached into her wallet and couldn't find any money, so I told her to check his pockets. Sam turned them out and showed them that they were empty. But how is this possible? I saw it myself. Then Sarah came up to me and felt my pockets, where she found the money. How did he manage to slip them to me and when? Do you understand what happened after that? That's right, Sarah kicked me out of the house. Sam got his way, he pushed me out, and now he had no boundaries. He took my rightful place. Sarah didn't even look at me as I packed my bags, and the nasty guy opened the door for me and waved goodbye with a grin. I was so angry. I went to see my colleague. It's good that he took me in and told him about the situation. Then he asked me to stay with him temporarily and come up with a plan to get back. A colleague said that there would probably be a time when Sam decided to steal from Sarah very big and that this would require proof. Of course, not all at once, but it's worth waiting and catching the moment. First of all, on the advice of a colleague, I wrote to Sarah that I love her, but since there is no place for me in the house, I am leaving for my homeland. She knows where I'm from. It was important that she knew I wasn't here, and that Sam found out. As we all knew, as soon as I kind of left, the little bastard got really fucked up. While Sarah was at work, he didn't go to school, threw parties at our house, drank alcohol, and smoked drugs. I caught it all on camera. Sam stole a car from our neighbors and got drunk behind the wheel. He crashed the car and immediately called Sarah and said it was all my fault. That is, her husband. Yeah, in this state, he forgot I wasn't around. I could hear everything, sitting nearby from behind the bushes, and filmed everything. 30 minutes later, Sarah arrived. She was dealing with the neighbors. At this time, Sam's friends managed to escape, and he took something to cut off. Sarah wrote out a check for car repairs and then went to the house to deal with it. I technically climbed to the second floor and sat next to the window to listen in on the conversation. Sarah told him that I was out of town, and then she cried bitterly, saying that it was hard for her to be with him. Instead of asking for forgiveness, Sam raised his hand to her and slapped her to the face. Sarah was in shock and asked him not to do it, but he hit her again. I couldn't stand it and climbed through the window. They were both in shock, and then I showed them the video. Sam didn't know what to say, and Sarah started to cry even more. Everything was clear. Yes, we got the baby back. My wife realized that we are not ready to raise such an adult child. So for now, we agreed to become parents of our baby, and then we'll see.
Hi guys, my name is Matthew. In life, sometimes unthinkable things happen, and people do not deliberate their actions. I want to tell you about how my foster parents sold me to my mom for $500,000. This phrase sounds absurd, but believe me, this happens in life. I hope my story will serve as a lesson to many. My story started from my birth. My mother got pregnant when she was only 17, naturally by accident. As she says, the father was her age and afraid of responsibility and disappeared somewhere. And she didn't have any relatives, so she grew up as an orphan. And so she had to face this problem, so to speak, one-on-one. I understand that it was not easy for her, because she was in fact still a child, and she didn't have a lot of money. The only solution was to leave me in an orphanage. But as you know, children are not well looked after there. Any mother wishes her child a good life, and she decided to take a dangerous and illegal step. She found a couple on the internet named Emma and Daniel, and right after I was born, she sold me to them for $1,000. So I didn't even know for a long time who my parents really were. Emma had problems with infertility. Doctors diagnosed her that she could not have any children. At first, they seemed to love me very much and treated me like their native child. They bought me everything new, took me to different entertainment places, and took care of my education. Everything seemed to be fine, right? But medicine does not stand still. Soon, when they found treatment for infertility, Emma was the first in line. A miracle happened, and she was able to get pregnant. She also had a son named Michael. They were overjoyed. I do not know what happened, but with the birth of their own son, they began to treat me more rudely, not as their own biological child. At that time, I did not know that I was adopted, and so it was very strange for me why they treated me like this. They stopped paying attention to me. I even got used to the fact that I was often forgotten to be picked up from school. They took Michael to different courses while I started doing household chores after school at an early age. If Michael bought new toys, then his old and broken ones were given to me, and everything else like that. This cruel attitude towards me was manifested more and more every time. Over time, they began to scold me for the slightest mistake or fault. Every time I did something wrong, Daniel pulled out his leather belt. Of course, they were only trying to scare me, but I didn't even have to do anything wrong, or I could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. When I turned 16, my parents said they were not going to pay for my studies anymore, and they did not care that I would drop out of school. But I didn't want to do that, so I had to get a job to somehow find money for the contract. Fortunately, the owner of the local fast food restaurant agreed to take me to work for half the rate. It gave me hope. I performed all the tasks that were given to me with great responsibility. After school, I immediately went to work and was there until night, every day. At first, I washed the dishes in the restaurant. Not to say that's a good job, but I liked the feeling that I could earn money on my own. After all, they say there is no bad work. Our team was also very friendly. It was even more pleasant to be there than at home. At least no one scolded me there, and my parents didn't even think of where I was or what I was doing. I think it was even easier for them that I wasn't home at all. Seeing my efforts, the chief decided to promote me and appointed me to a new position. I became a cashier and already took orders from guests. This was career growth, so to speak. I kept up with my studies. In my free time, I did my homework, so it was all right. But once I noticed that one woman began to frequent our fast food restaurant. She looked like she was well off, and for me, people like her rarely go to places like that. She only ordered coffee every day and could sit and watch me for hours. I couldn't figure out what she wanted from me, but I didn't dare ask. She also ordered only from me. Even when I was busy, she waited until I was free. You could say it even scared me. She watched my every move intently. You know how creepy it is if you're being watched all the time by someone you don't know? One day, I had to stay after work and clean the hall as a duty officer, and all the visitors had already left. But this woman didn't leave. When I went to warn her about the closing, she took my hand and asked me to sit down and talk. I was shocked by this, but I still sat down. She introduced herself as Linda and asked me to listen and understand. She said that she was my biological mother and told me how she went to such a step and, so to speak, sold me. After all, she was very young and helpless. But now she works for a prestigious firm and has a good home. And since the moment she lost me, she couldn't calm down about it and gave her word that no matter what, she would find me. My brain did not perceive this information, and I could not believe what she was saying, and this was nonsense. But at the time, I thought about it. The thought never left my mind. I decided to check with my parents, as it were, whether this was actually true. This news greatly surprised and angered them. Emma said that yes, it really was true. And if I want to, then I can go to her, but on one condition, that I will have to work and return all the money they spent on me since my childhood. Well, that's about $500,000. Well, until I could pay them, they took my documents. I hated being around them, so I packed my backpack and went to work. I wanted to pay the money as soon as possible and never see them again. I spent the night secretly at work, so the chief didn't know. I slept in the back room, and in the morning I went to school. Since the last conversation with Linda, she had stopped coming, and I hadn't seen her for a long time. But I really didn't care. I knew in my heart that this was my real mother. A week later, Emma called me and told me to come home immediately, but I didn't want to see them, so I turned off my phone so they wouldn't bother me, and quietly worked on. Whatever happened, I didn't care. Then Linda came to us one day. She had an envelope in her hand, and with tears in her eyes, she asked me to listen to her. She slipped me the envelope and told me that she took my documents and paid all the money that Emma and Daniel demanded from me. I was shocked because this is not a small amount. Unless she has such savings, in fact, it turned out that she sold her house, car, and even jewelry for this. But why, do you ask? Any mother would do anything for her child, and for Linda, it was not a pity to lose everything so long that her son did not suffer. She was very sorry that she sold me, and from that moment she realized her huge mistake. Now my biological mother and I live together, but in a rented apartment. I'm not used to calling her mom yet, but I try. But all this is not important because I really felt now what a mother's love is. In life, everything happens, and sometimes people do not deliberate and do terrible things. Share what interesting stories you had. Maybe something similar happened to your friends.